What was the weirdest thing you've seen someone fake for attention? A kid in elementary school faked a speech impediment so she'd keep getting out of class for speech therapy. Initially it was real, but speech therapy had totally cured it. She just didn't want anyone to know. One of the words she mispronounced was yellow. She would say, "lello" instead. One day we were on the playground together and she said, "I'm gonna tell you a secret." She leaned over and whispered in my ear, "yellow," with a hard Y at the beginning. Then she laughed and said, "Don't tell anyone." So I didn't, until just now. When I was in middle school, the girl who was a senior at their high school died. This girl in my class said it was her cousin. She even broke down crying in class, shaking, hyperventilating, etc. Turns out it was not her cousin. In fact, she never even met or knew of her till she died. I know how that goes. When I was in HS, my best buddy passed away in an accident. He was a popular dude and a few grades above me, but we were tight. I remember so many people using his death as an excuse to get out of class and a few that would fake a breakdown so they could go home. Thing is though that none of those people ever talked to him or cared to make friends. They just knew his name from around the school and what had happened. Most of those kids have turned out pretty shitty or dead themselves from drugs 17 years later. Kinda makes a person wonder. One of my classmates got an asthma attack and everyone was flocking over to them to make sure they were okay. On the other side of the room, another one of my classmates also got an asthma attack. Even though it was common knowledge that she didn't have asthma, there were very few people in class that had asthma and we all knew just in case it was an emergency. They faked the hard breathing and exaggerated gasps. It was weird that someone would do something like that just so they would have attention. One of our senators is the lunatic daughter of a late dictator. She never finished college, but keeps insisting that she graduated from Princeton, as well as one of the top law schools in our country. She doesn't show any paperwork, photos, degrees, diplomas, or records of any kind. She just insists it's true despite it being the easiest thing in the world to debunk, as it was, over and over through a simple email or phone call to the schools in question. Her bizarre, elaborate statements to dodge simple yes, no questions about her academic credentials have become somewhat of a meme. Holy shit, just read about her torture and murder of the activist Archimedes guy. Literally admitted to it and lost a civil suit and in response said yes, he was tortured and murdered, but it is none of your business. I'll admit I don't know much of anything about Filipino politics, but how is she an elected national senator? Question mark. A boy I went to elementary school with faked being kidnapped in the middle of the school day. He disappeared for hours. The whole school was in a panic, especially his mother who was a teaching assistant. They eventually discovered him passed out in the woods near the school. He claimed that one of the Hispanic construction workers who was across campus working on a new building had abducted him, beat him unconscious and left him for dead in the woods. However, he did not have any signs of being assaulted. He was just covered in dirt. His mother was immediately suspicious of her son's behavior, not sure why, and told authorities she thought he was lying. The construction worker he blamed had several good alibis. He had a special trait that made his whereabouts particularly important for the project they were working on that day. The cops investigated and his story quickly fell apart and he confessed to making it up. I'm not sure why he did it. I went to school with him for years after. He was a weird kid and acted out on other occasions for attention just to a lesser degree. He had great grades too and seemed to have a very loving family. There was this one dude, Jake, hated it when the attention wasn't on him. This was roughly 12 years ago, but once after a party ended he was deemed too drunk. He had a beer and 2 shots of sour pucker liquor. He stayed the night then pretended to sleep and that he was a soldier during NOM and was running all over the place with his eyes closed. One of his buddies ended up tossing a bucket of water on Jake, but that didn't wake him up. That same buddy tackled Jake before he ran outside to make a scene and that magically woke him up. Whenever there were get-togethers he would saying he's gonna hurt himself when people weren't interacting with him. People stopped paying attention cause he would say it every single time, and when he realized it he'd start throwing a tantrum that everyone hates him and that he has no friends so no one would care. I responded, the police will care. Let me call them. He stopped that act real quick. This reminds me of this guy from Bulgaria who basically did something really similar, except after approximately 1-2, he would start drunkenly confessing to us all that he was a Russian spy. He was either full of shit, or the worst spy ever. Now, one of my friend's friends pretending to be hallucinating. She even had the nerve to ask me how long do hallucinations last. She was doing it to see how her boyfriend would react. Ugh. I was part of this group in college where one person came forward about her hallucinations. She has actual diagnosed issues, and then suddenly half the group had them, too. It was amazing how many people just randomly by chance all had the same attention-getting thing. In high school, this kid passed away in a car accident. I didn't really know him but was tight with his older brother. The sheer amount of people who never associated with him that came out of the woodwork was fucking crazy. Like, the guy was really into riding dirt bikes and any X Games types of hobbies, skating, BMX, snowboarding, and actively talked shit on a couple of regular sports jocks. But apparently they were best friends when nobody, not even his brother, knew they were. His brother just kinda eye-rolled them to their face and talked mad shit with us later on. It was really pathetic to take one family's pain and try to get attention with it. That hits pretty close to home. Valedictorian from my high school committed suicide. I wasn't super close to them, so I just kinda avoided the whole situation, but the amount of people that came out of nowhere to be like, she was so important to me or other similar bullshit was appalling. If any of them fucking cared, maybe they would have at least asked if this person was okay. A lot of people put on an act to make this suicide more about them than the person who literally died. A girl in my year at school faked a miscarriage and went round telling everybody that a guy from her class fingered her and he must have had some cum on his hands because she got pregnant and lost it. The guy had an alibi. His friends confirmed he was playing football with them and a lot of people called her a dirty slut. Being fingered on a Friday evening and losing the baby on Saturday is quite impressive. /s. She got attention, but I think she was expecting sympathetic attention and it backfired spectacularly. In high school I had a toxic, controlling friend. She once set me up with this classmate of ours, essentially pushing for it to make us both just feel cornered. A week or so later, he breaks up with me, didn't really give a shit. Really, and then not quite 12 hours later, she calls me and confesses that he loved her all along and how guilty she felt. But this is the man for her. She's just going on and on. His sisters are supposedly pressuring him to confess that he's gay, but he denies it, says he and my friend have sex all the time. So she runs with it, allowing this ongoing lie that they're having all this sex. They're so in love, just really laying it on thick. Dude later comes out as gay and they were both still virgins. I just don't get the point. She further ruined a shitty friendship for a guy that was gay. But for what? People are fucking weird. A pupil with a grudge against a teacher at my school deliberately broke his own finger by slamming a locker door on it and then accused the teacher of slamming his finger in a door in a fit of anger, just to get him into trouble. Of course, the problem was it was his index finger and he could not have had it so badly damaged without severely bruising/cutting/breaking the fingers on either side. He was psychotic. There's a woman I work with that is a chronic liar. Normally the stuff she makes up are about how she was a world-renowned ex. So far she's been an opera singer, competitive swimmer, prodigal child, teacher in Mexico, doesn't speak a word of Spanish, Mensa member, coked-out drag queen, figure skater, and has just a ton of obscure diseases. The diseases obviously prevent her from being able to do certain things around the office but luckily never interfere with her ability to go out to her car to smoke on break. What sticks out was telling everyone she was pregnant and later on that she miscarried. That one sticks out because it happened while another woman in the office was pregnant and getting more attention. Currently a good friend of this person who also works with us is pretending to use a cane in order to try and get FMLA and avowed certain responsibilities, which is not boring. If anything else, luckily for her, despite not being able to walk 5 feet to check in stuff, she's also still able to make the journey out to her car and smoke on her breaks. An acquaintance faked a kidney stone problem, demanded her husband take her to the hospital in the middle of the night, and then when he got dressed and grabbed the car keys, she insisted on going alone by car and warned him that she might get into an accident and end up getting killed, and it would all be his fault. He insisted on taking her, and she wouldn't go. She would only go herself, all alone, risking her life in a car accident. So it's either getting the kidney stones untreated, or risking her life in a terrible car accident that might happen. They had a huge falling out and she went back to bed. Of course, this was all a result of a previous fight they had earlier that day. A chick I went to high school with always faked pregnancies, did this multiple times. It got to a point where she stole her sister's ultrasound pictures and posted it everywhere. Her sister ended up calling her out on her BS. Then she claimed she had a miscarriage. Which she also lied about multiple times. Had one really similar. She claimed she was pregnant and brought an ultrasound to school to prove it. Well, her sister showed up to get her ultrasound back and made a scene, so then everyone knew. Though, that was the last time she claimed that. A friend of my classmate faked her death once. My classmate went on for 5 years believing that her friend was dead. Turns out, the girl was just in prison. Her grandparents, who she had been living with her whole life, told everyone that the girl had died and everyone believed it. They even had a fake funeral for her. I don't know much about it, but that's what I do know. A friend of mine used to make up relatives and talk about them on a daily basis. She apparently had an aunt that worked for the Rolling Stone, and would come into school saying her aunt interviewed Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger / insert famous rock star here. We used to both use DeviantArt on the regular, and she actually made an account for her aunt and commented as her. Also claimed to have a cousin who was in the SAS and would legit start the waterworks, claiming he was leaving the country for his work. Even faked a boyfriend at one point, fake Facebook profile and everything. Always had an excuse for where any of them were whenever one of us would visit her house, despite them apparently visiting almost every day. These three were just a few of the supposedly massive family she had. No idea why she did it. Eventually these family members just faded out of existence. We never heard about them again after secondary school. I was watching this movie with a big group of girls. We were all in our late 20s except for one girl that was 19. The movie had this graphic rap scene and my friend, who has experienced awful sexual abuse, quietly got up and excused herself, then returned when the scene was done. The 19-year-old asked her why she left and she told her. About 30 minutes later into the movie there was another sex scene where the girl was calling the guy daddy and it got super graphic. The 19-year-old was giggling, then randomly threw herself on the ground and started screaming. We paused the movie and tried to talk to her, but she started hitting everyone. We all just walked away to leave her to do whatever she was doing. 1 hour later she came outside angry that no one tried to console her like we did our friend. We pointed out that my friend quietly excused herself and never asked to be comforted. She didn't make a scene. We tried, but she hit us. There was a graphic rap scene that didn't bother you. How were we supposed to know a regular sex scene would trigger you? She left and called us bitches. Her cousin, my friend, later said she typically does stuff like this for attention. In second grade, this girl everyone loved said her sister threw a plastic headband at her and it scratched out her eyeball. So she had to go to the and they dug through a bucket full of donated eyeballs to find one that matched her iris color. She also told us she had her leg bitten off by a shark and had a prosthetic leg, but we all saw her at a water slide party a week later, so that was hard to explain. Of all the injuries to fake, the whole eye being scratched out thing is probably the dumbest one of all. I'm not a medical expert, but the optic nerve doesn't regenerate by itself, so I'm pretty sure full eye transplants aren't possible. Not even gonna dignify the bucket of eyes part. My former best friend used to fake being suicidal because he knew it would make me super anxious and he thought it was fun to get me riled up. At the end of our friendship he ended up admitting that he has never made plans to actually kill himself. He just liked pretending that he did cause he thought it was funny to see me upset. There are many other reasons we're not friends anymore, but this has to be the biggest reason. A girl in high school made one of those anonymous confessions pages and posted a bunch of posts about her secretly being a slut and having sex with John, James, Jim, and basically any popular guy you could think of. She was a quiet girl who was in marching band and she was kind of goth. She got made fun of often for being a weirdo, so I guess that's why she started the page to write the confessions. We only ever found out it was her because someone snuck up on her in the library once, saw her making a post on the page, took a photo of it, and posted it on Facebook with her account tagged and everything. She was extremely humiliated and even the teachers gave her some questionable looks. She ended up switching schools for her senior year. It was just weird that she did that because she did have a good amount of friends and was nice when you talked to her. I guess she either wanted people to think she was sexually active and or make the popular guys look bad by getting everyone to think that they slept with the weird gothic band chick. I worked in a restaurant and a hostess pretended to have a British accent. Months went by and she continued to speak with the accent but would drop it around skeptics. She also said she was in medical school, and somehow worked full-time at the restaurant, and that she used to study elephants in Africa. None of this was true. She left and a friend got an Uber pool and saw the next person to get in was her name with the prefix doctor, so apparently she's a faking being a doctor now and no longer has a British accent. I knew someone in college who faked being gay. He dated quite a lot of women for being gay. Also, same college, a guy faked being the resurrection of Jesus. He was really kind, literally looked like the genuine depiction of Jesus, not the whitewashed one. He listened and helped a lot of people with a lot of their problems. So for that, no one really cared that he was faking it. A girl I met online told everyone in our circle that her cancer came back. She was incredibly needy and always wanted attention. She expects you to drop everything you're doing and be with her. If you tell her you will be there in a minute, she'll say things like, "That's okay, I'll be by myself. Maybe it's a good thing to have some alone time since I will probably die soon anyway." Sometimes she'll say that she has lost all her hair, but then she has this insanely high sex drive. Also, I caught her catfishing when she uses a picture of a Japanese girl when in real life, she's a Hispanic goth girl. When I showed doubt in her, she went to great length to try proving me wrong by telling me she's at so-and-so hospital in Puerto Rico, room number, etc., knowing I'm not going to bother calling an international number. I once knew a lady who faked being deaf and having cancer for attention. She even went so far as to wear a fake hearing implant and tube in her chest. She shaved her head bald too. My sister-in-law was good friends with her in high school, and when she found out it had all been a lie 5 years after they had met, she was super upset since she had been very supportive of her the whole time. This happened yesterday. I ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in years. I asked about a mutual acquaintance. The acquaintance, who I hadn't seen in years either, told me they had terminal cancer last time I saw them. Only months to live. I was told the acquaintance was very much still alive, and had relapsed into a large meth problem again. My friend told me he suspected I was told about cancer to garner attention and sympathy. Funny thing is, the mutual acquaintance could never ask me for money, didn't even ask me to buy him a drink at the bar we were at, just lied about having cancer, I guess. What the fuck? I had an ex-girlfriend in high school who said she had a kid from a previous relationship. I talked about it with her and told her that it doesn't bother me and I would love to be him. The next day she came to school crying about how her son drowned in a pool. I called her up later and her mom picked up the phone and I wanted to see how she was holding up. I told her mom what she told me. She said, "What the hell are you talking about? She never had a kid." I hung up furious and broke up with her the next day. There are a lot of things to lie about to get attention, but people actually go through hell because of things like that, and the drama queen bitch just wanted pity. I was calling my friend out on some of his bullshit. He's manipulative, abusive, and neglectful of his family, and I've had enough of just watching it happen. I was in the middle of tearing into him when he burst into tears claiming I have stage 4 lung cancer, but he hasn't lost weight, isn't hoarse, hasn't been to a doctor's office or hospital since his daughter was born, has a big appetite, no shortness of breath present. I told him he's full of shit and continued to tear into him until he broke down and blubbered. Cut to a couple of years later and yeah, he was lying. He was desperate for me to be on his side and sympathize. He just came up with that lie on the spot.